training camp. Buck Rising hanging out here with you. We got Bryce Kern in the house hanging out, enforcer of the no tolerance policy on this show. Last day before Pops is sending him back to school. He's trying to duck out, hang out with the Titans for joint training camp practices Wednesday and Thursday when the Tampa Bay Bucs come to Nashville. Sans Tom Brady, of course. Good morning, Joseph. Lucas Panzica is here. We got Kirby Allen Kirby. Will Bowling is scurrying about somewhere in the ether, gathering all of the practice film footage that you could possibly want. You can jump in if you'd like. 615-737-1045. That's the number. 615-737-1045. So we've had preseason games, a whole slate of them. And I like the way that they were staggered, even if the football was thoroughly nauseating by about the second quarter in any one of these games that you would choose. But back on the practice field today, Bucs are coming in. Saturday is the preseason game here in Nashville. We will have Robert Woods on the show today at 11, what did we say, about 11:30 when practice wraps up. Trevor Sikkema is going to be here in just about 10 minutes. And we will talk about all the different things that we saw from the first kind of complete slate of NFL football that we've gotten our hands on this season. Good morning, bud.
Well, it was a good morning. It was a good morning until I muffed Brett Kern's punt right at us when we were walking over here to our broadcast setup. Roster cut day is tomorrow. We cannot be out here tomorrow, so I'm going to go ahead and start packing my bags.
That was your one snap. You got one snap today on film, and not only did you muff the punt, because just to set the scene, I wasn't going to hang Lucas out to dry. I was going to let him do it himself, give him enough rope just to hang himself. But we were walking from the far third field where the Titans are practicing today over to our setup here at the broadcast tent where Kirby is, of course, holding down the fort. And the specialists are working on the field directly in front of us. Kern looked like he was, going to use me for target practice, but instead Lucas used it as an opportunity to try and show off for somebody. I don't know for who, because it was just me over there.
I saw a ball in the air coming right at me. I didn't think about anything else. I didn't process anything else in my mind. I was holding a Gatorade bottle in one hand, so I'm going to attribute it to that. But I'm going to be replaying that in my head throughout the course of the show and the day.
Well, and by far the more egregious error by him, Kirby, than not catching the punt sent in his direction directly at his chest by Brett Kern was what?
He left a professional football player that had awarded him an opportunity to look good hanging in the wind.
That's right. By
leaving the ball some 60 yards from where Kern was at for him to have to jog down and pick it up.
Yeah.
This 20-year-old who atrociously duffed that
Your child.
punt.
Is what Kirby said to you.
The punt was, the attempted catch was horrific. But then to just leave it and embarrassingly give a nod to the punter who's standing there waiting for some kind of, recovery and got nothing.
No, he gave you a chance. You betrayed him not once but twice.
First of all, do they not have people for that kind of thing?
Yeah, young Cub reporters walking around that they punt to.
buddy, the equivalent is what you are. You are the people to go and make sure if a ball comes your direction, the objective is not to make a play on the ball. It's just to make sure that it gets back to the football player.
The shame was far too great. I think I blacked out as soon as that ball went through my arms because I thought I had it secured, and then it just kind of bobbled and then went right through. And I just blacked out. I didn't see what happened after that. Next thing I know, I'm sitting here with a headset.
Brett Batchelor back in the studio making it all happen today, who has already hit Lucas with sound that makes me very happy. So if you're going to be proficient at the sound this week, Brett, let's just make sure that it's working against Lucas.
I felt like it was very needed
for
that occasion.
Well done. So we're going to preview wide receivers today since Woods is going to be our guest, and we'll chop it up with the Titans wideout at 11:30, as we mentioned. But in the meantime, preseason action getting underway. Of course, the Titans playing in Baltimore on Thursday, but there was all manner of different things to watch. A lot of starting quarterbacks playing in the preseason in the early going. We talked about Deshaun Watson and what kind of a situation that would be. By the way, thoroughly underwhelming, the product that he put together in 3 drives. 5 passing attempts, 1 completion for 7 yards, and a hell of a lot of overthrows, which brings up, I think, a lot of questions about the player himself and what that may mean for a depreciation of skills or just a lack of sharpness if he has to miss a whole nother year on top of choosing not to play for the Texans last year. Those are the kind of things that are going to pop up throughout the course of the preseason. You saw Matt Ryan for the first time in a Colts uniform. Baker Mayfield getting the start for the Carolina Panthers. And, of course, Sam Darnold and he in an open competition there, allegedly. I don't think that's quite the case. I think that's Baker's job to lose. But a lot of different things. And then the young guys, which is why I think everything kind of spiraled or tailspin the way that it did locally, because you saw all the young rookies out there. You saw Kenny Pickett leading touchdown drives. You saw Desmond Ridder out there throwing darts in reserve or in relief of Marcus Mariota, who had a rushing touchdown behind an Atlanta offensive line that is going to do him dirty throughout the course of the year. You can already tell. So it was a lot of fun to see a lot of different people in new places, but particularly at the quarterback position is kind of where I was struck.
A lot of quarterbacks.
A lot of quarterbacks.
A lot of rookies that played well over the weekend. You mentioned Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
Had a nice day. Not a rookie, but Trevor Lawrence looked sharp. With so much turnover in this offseason in the NFL, whether it's quarterback turnover or head coaching turnover, like I know that was the case for the Giants. Brian Daboll needed his starters to play a few series in that preseason opener against New England on Thursday. So I wonder if that's the case for a lot of franchises like the Jags and Doug Peterson playing Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence along with a few other starters for a while, too. Like a lot of starters got 4 or 5 series. Matt Ryan played 4 drives. For the Colts, which seems like a hefty amount.
Well, and they didn't play particularly well. Like, again, it's preseason, so don't make too much out of it. It's just the preseason. These things are not actually real football that are taking place in front of us. But I guess I was just, you're looking from veteran quarterbacks, crisp and clean operation. And I think a lot of the players that they had out on the field with Matt Ryan, outside of Jonathan Taylor, who obviously did not play, you look at that and say, well, you would expect it to be a little more smooth if that's the kind of caliber of player that you're going to bring in who's been through these things before, even if it is a new team and new players and all these kind of things. It was an interesting observation. I don't know that I was surprised. I don't know that I was shocked. I don't know that I was disappointed. Nothing that quite extreme, because you try not to get too what's the coaching cliche? Too high, too low on the preseason. Yeah, we're going to avoid that. But as far as the rookies were concerned, that was a lot more of where my focus was. George Pickens. You talk about Kenny Pickett. George Pickens also on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster, just out there dummying dudes in ways that he's so much physically superior to a lot of the defensive backs that he's playing. And you're seeing this in the evolution of wide receivers anyway. You're seeing this with the evolution of corners. I mean, we spent so much time talking throughout training camp about what Caleb Farley looks like, what his length and athleticism is going to allow him to do, and how he can play these super-sized, super-long wide receivers better than a guy like Chris Jackson, who goes up and tries to compete with 85. Who was that? Shamar Bridges for the Baltimore Ravens, and just there's 0% chance that you're going to be able to make a play unless you are Spider-Man, basically, in that instance. The wide receiver size has become so overwhelming for a lot of these smaller defensive backs, and that was kind of evident to me watching George Pickens play for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the wide receiver out of Georgia. He go 3rd round or 2nd round?
Oh, I can't remember where George. Let me check.
I know. I mean, I talked to Cosell about him a lot, and Greg thought that
second round.
2nd round?
Yeah, 52.
Man, there are a lot of people that are gonna. I think there's always regrets, or man, I wish they would have taken X, Y, and Z in the draft, because, of course, anytime a player looks successful or looks the part, you're like, I wish my team would have taken him 18th overall, or maybe not 18th overall.
He never caught more than 49 passes in a season at Georgia, and that was his freshman year in 2019. I mean, played in 4 games, I think. Yeah, 4 games, 5 catches for 107 yards in their national championship winning season. So any time that the injuries are that consistent in the back half of your college career,
sure,
you're gonna drop. And that's exactly what happened, but Steelers probably got a steal out of that one.
And then there's the godforsaken top 100 in the NFL on NFL Network. How much do you pay attention to this? I know people certainly like to have discussions on social media about it. I understand why the NFL Network does. It's a fun exercise. And the players, I think generally seem to enjoy talking about one another, but given that the first Titan on the list was 54th, and it was probably one of the best players in the sport right now, not just on his team, but certainly at his position, Jeff Simmons, as the 54th best player in football, confirms to me what I know to be so about NFL players. They don't watch games. They don't watch games. These guys watch opponents coming up the week of. If they're off, if they got a bye, maybe you'll see them tweeting about Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football, whatever the case may be. But these dudes don't actually watch games in ways that are meaningful. If you've played against Jeff, you know what he's capable of. But there is nothing about what that player brings, and it's just an example of this. There will be several more throughout the course of the list. This is why it drives me crazy. The players vote on it, and it's probably the worst one because they're not watching everybody on Sundays. They're working. I'm not mad at them about it. It's just I don't care what they think about it, largely.
I don't know. I think there should be a balance there.
No.
I mean, they know more about it. They know more about what Jeffrey Simmons can do than you do, right? Like the front.
Well,
of
they felt more of what Jeffrey Simmons can do than I can.
The offensive linemen of the Indianapolis Colts know a whole lot more about the intricacies of Jeff Simmons' game as it pertains to how he stacks up with other defensive tackles around the league than any of us do.
Sure, but they're not exclusively voting.
Right.
That's not the only group voting.
Absolutely, yeah, I know.
On the top 100.
Right, which is the problem. Like you're asking, if you're asking other defensive tackles, then you probably won't get as good of a perspective because they might see other guys and study other guys, especially in their early years of their career. But like Chris Jones, isn't studying Jeffrey Simmons every week, and that's probably the type of guy that I imagine that they go to a lot of the players in that position group around the league. Right? Like, I don't know what the process is. Do they just send out like a poll?
I have very, very capital J journalist questions about the vetting process for the top 100 list because I believe it all to be bull bleep. But looking at Jeff Simmons' ranking as 54th, I don't think there's any bigger confirmation of the bias that I already have about the list and the amount of players that are actually watching the games outside the dudes that go against them on a week-in, week-out basis. That's about the extent of credibility that I'm willing to lend. If Quentin Nelson wants to talk to me about Jeff Simmons, swell. I get it. We can have a conversation. But, I'm not really concerned about the rest of it, nor should you be. So let that be the last that we talk about the top 100 list in the NFL.
Until Derrick Henry shows up.
That is correct. 615-737-1045. That's how you jump in. Our buddy Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus. We're going to go through some of the takeaways that we had from preseason week 1, new faces, new places. We'll do that coming up next.
Buck Rising Show is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Love and happiness for certain. Football back. Preseason or not, it was enjoyable to see all variety of different players and teams back out on the field. We're happy to have our buddy Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus with us on the line right now to go through some of the takeaways that we have. What's up, Trev?
What's going on, guys? Appreciate you having me on. What a wonderful time of year it is for you guys to be at training camp, me be calling in again. This is the best time of year. Appreciate you guys having me.
Oh, listen, it is our great honor and privilege. My only regret is that you're not going to be here like you used to be for Tampa Bay joint practices coming up this week.
I know. The second I saw it on the calendar, I was like, oh, man, I miss it. I miss those days, man. I miss it. But you'll just have to enjoy it double for me. So that's just your job for the week.
Not when it comes to the meet and three, of course. Not that kind of a double. But the rest of it, yeah, we got you covered. Trevor Sikkema here with us at Tampa Bay Trey is where you follow him on the socials. And, of course, the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, a must listen to at any time of year, but certainly as we get ramped back up. Okay, so it's all largely slop out there, Trevor. But just to keep it local or to start local, Malik Willis kind of took Thursday night by storm. The reactions here were, of course, predictably insane. What was your general observations about the way that the Titans rookie quarterback performed?
No, I mean, honestly, like when you look at Malik Willis and what his scouting report would have been just going into the preseason, a lot of that came to fruition.
Right.
A lot of that stuff was what we saw on the field. Malik Willis is going to be one of the most exciting prospects that we see all preseason. He was one of the most exciting prospects in the entire draft class. And you saw that throughout the night, right? Whether it was escaping the pocket or extending the plays or the rocket arm with that deep pass, like he put it all on display out there. Now, he also put it seems harsh to say the bad, but honestly, like the things that he needs to improve. His scouting report, it's exactly what it read before the draft. You saw that out on the field because you look at some of his mechanics. You look at the lower body, how the footwork wasn't always married with exactly when he wanted to throw it, being ready at all times, right? All of those things you saw out on the field, and this was to be expected. Something that I talked about throughout the entire draft process is you look at Malik Willis, and it's typical for people to say, okay, well, the mechanics need to get better. He can be more disciplined. Feels like that's a cookie-cutter thing to say about any prospect headed to the NFL. But it was very true with Malik because you looked at what he was at Liberty, specifically the offensive line in front of him. Guys, that was one of the worst offensive lines in the country at Liberty over the last 2 years. Of course, Malik Willis wasn't going to be able to improve how he looked in the pocket, his discipline, his regiment, the muscle memory, if you will, all of that. There's no way he was going to be able to improve upon that staying at Liberty. And so you're seeing some of those growing pains here in the NFL, but you are also seeing the excitement, why a lot of people had him as their QB1, the guy with the highest ceiling in this class. I thought both of those things were on display this past weekend. You talked
to plenty of coaches, Trevor. Like, I think that's the biggest disconnect that we've been trying to kind of bridge for people coming off that game. Because you see somebody like Logan Woodside who comes in and people are already largely over it because they're very excited, rightfully so, about a quarterback with a lot of promise in about as good a situation and a case study for what he needs out of his early NFL experience. But then Woodside comes in, there's 2 interceptions, and people start to immediately project that, okay, this makes no sense that they would keep potentially 3 quarterbacks on the roster. But I think when you hone in on the granular stuff that you just mentioned there that Malik is having to learn, people have to understand that there are certain things that Logan Woodside knows how to do at the pro level that Malik Willis just has not had the repetition of yet.
Well, listen, it's 2022, so we're officially in the Madden generation fandom, and you've played Madden, I've played Madden, everybody does. We always love the athletic young quarterback. Get him in, put him at QB2, make him the starter.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that's how it is for everybody, and I feel like that's how a lot of people view these situations. Now, it'd be different if the Titans were a bad football team, but they're not. This is a team that was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year, and so you need that kind of experience. For as much as you want to look at Malik Willis and say he might be the future of this franchise, Ryan Tannehill's the guy right now, but if Ryan Tannehill were to get a short-term injury, if he were to miss a couple of games, you'd probably want Woodside in there for that experience because the rest of the team around him is so good, especially on that defensive side of the football. You've got a running game where you can heavily lean on Derrick Henry. All of those things exist. If the Titans were a team where you said, all right, the over-under win total somewhere around 6 or 7, yeah, you could probably make a much better case for just putting Malik Willis out there if the situation ever presented itself with an injury to Tannehill or whatever it was, to say, get that experience, get those live reps, understand the speed of the NFL game. But for the Titans, every game matters so much because they're hoping to continue to contend for division titles and for different spots in the playoffs. And so that's why I'd ultimately say, yes, of course, the ceiling, the athletic gifts, the tools of Malik Willis are higher than Woodside. They really are. And I think that everybody would say that. But the player that can go out there and, I'll say, not lose you the football game, it's probably Woodside at this point. So that's why you don't immediately just say, oh, of course, you got to make Malik Willis the backup. There is certainly a case to holding 3 quarterbacks on that roster for that very reason. And I think that that's probably what the Titans are going to end up doing.
At Tampa Bay Trey is where you can follow our buddy Trevor Sikkema, of course, PFF.com, where you can check all of the workout that he's doing and, of course, all of his colleagues over there at PFF. So elsewhere around the NFL, like it's just there's always a moment where you're kind of jarred by whether it's a player in a new uniform that you're not accustomed to seeing or just a player that you had no idea was on the current roster that kind of catches your attention and be like, I had no idea that Anquan Boldin was a Detroit Lion for a hot second. Who was that moment for you in the preseason?
Well, I mean, it's just, look, I know he hasn't played much, but seriously, Devontae Adams not being in a Green Bay Packers uniform is still the strangest thing to me. And we're probably going to get 12 weeks into the season, and I'm just still going to be like, damn, Devontae's really not on the Packers, huh? And maybe it'll take me watching a couple of Packers games to see that. But, I mean, that was the crazy – all the wide receivers, man. We're going to see Marquise Brown with Kyler Murray again, just like it was in college, the same thing as Derek Carr and Devontae Adams when they were at Fresno State. I mean, A.J. Brown being on the Eagles, I'm super excited about seeing that because I already thought this was going to be a massive year for Devontae Smith to potentially be that go-to wide receiver that they had there. Then they end up making an aggressive move to go get A.J. Brown, and all of a sudden I got a lot more faith in Jalen Hurts because I like Jalen Hurts even when he was coming through in the draft class, but I wasn't sure exactly if the team was going to give him that full vote of confidence, if he was going to have the right wide receivers around him. I really believe that he does now. So I'm excited to watch the Philadelphia Eagles in that regard. But Tyreek Hill as well, you throw his name in there. But that's what it's got to be for me, man. It's just got to be all of these wide receivers at different spots. So many of these playmakers that you've drafted from fantasy football that you remember in certain situations now going to new places, and we'll see if the production is the same for a lot of these top guys that moved to different places this offseason.
How Nick Sirianni obviously tailored that offense to play to their strengths last year, one of the most impressive rushing attacks, the best rushing attack in the NFL. And when you watch Jalen Hurts, and you'll correct me if my assessment is inaccurate, Trevor, but like I watch Jalen Hurts and I just see him a beat late on a lot of these throws that cost him opportunities, whether it's, ends up being a turnover or just a missed completion that would allow him to have greater success. When you're looking at how that offense kind of complemented him last year, what do you see them doing with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown that's going to be able to maximize what he can do as a passer?
Yeah, when I think of Jalen Hurts and like what could be over the next couple of years, I wonder if we're going to get a little bit into the Dak Prescott territory, where you remember with Dak Prescott, he was seen as a guy who could be a dual threat for you, right? He had dual threat ability out of Mississippi State. And early on with his time with the Cowboys, they allowed him to be a major rushing threat. And Dak can still scramble, and he still will certainly, but over the last couple of years, he has become that pocket passer. And it felt like people talked about Dak the same way that you're a little bit talking about Jalen Hurts right now, where you go, man, you like the arm, he can get the ball deep down the field, he just wasn't as pinpoint accurate as he needed to be, and he was a little bit late in his anticipation. He was reacting a little bit to coverage instead of really anticipating, throwing guys open, getting to those soft spots in the zones, things like that. I just feel like we talked about Dak in a similar light early on in his career, and now I would consider Dak Prescott to be one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that he's fantastic at processing the field. I think he can still use his legs plenty, but he doesn't rely on it nearly as much. He considers himself that pocket passer, and I wonder if the same is in store with Jalen Hurts because, remember, Dak Prescott was a fourth-round pick. It's not like people expected him to be this franchise quarterback coming out of Mississippi State, but he developed into that. It feels like that kind of a timeline could be in the cards for Jalen Hurts. I still think that they're going to use his rushing ability plenty because he does bring so much to an offense when you allow him to be free like that. But just getting his mindset to being more of that pocket passer and instilling that confidence in them, and then certainly having guys like Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, right? That doesn't hurt, right? Because those are players who you feel like have a lot of potential success both against man and zone coverages, guys who give you a lot of yards after the catch, which quarterbacks love to see. It gives them continued confidence to get that ball out of their hand and remain in that pocket passing mindset, if you will. So that's kind of the first thing that comes to my mind is going back to what Dak was early on. Are we about to see a similar type of journey from Jalen Hurts? I think this next year will certainly tell the tale of what his mindset is versus how much, he wants to run the ball versus passing the ball.
Locally, people don't want to see Trevor Lawrence succeed, understandably so, depending on fan allegiances. But I found it so refreshing, even again, as they're not scheming in the preseason, to watch Trevor Lawrence throwing to open receivers in the middle of the field. It made me happy for him. It made me happy for Jags fans. I do not want to see such a high-caliber prospect implode because of mismanagement, and it seems like Doug Peterson is going to be a stabilizing force there.
Look, even before Doug Peterson got hired, not to toot my own horn or say that I was first on it, but when I looked at the potential available head coaches, right, because the Jacksonville Jaguars had an open head coach spot before anybody else, I looked at Doug Peterson and said, man, this guy would be perfect. What he did with Nick Foles, what he did with Carson Wentz, quarterback background, how players absolutely loved him when he was in Philadelphia, the track record of being a Super Bowl head coach. That was always, to me, the home run hire for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it was just all around something that was going to elevate that team, but especially Trevor Lawrence, which was extremely paramount. I mean, we're seeing kind of the opposite with the Chicago Bears, right? We're looking at them. We're going, okay, what are you doing for Fields right now? The offensive line's not getting better. You really got to hammer home offensive weapons the next year, or else you are wasting Fields' rookie contract, which, as we know, a franchise talented quarterback on a rookie contract is one of the most valuable things in all of sports, not just football. The Jaguars did a great job of correcting their course as quickly and as abruptly as possible with the hire of Doug Peterson. And it's awesome to see Trevor Lawrence continue to improve here throughout this offseason, first couple preseason games. Of course, we got to see him do it consistently against NFL starters, but there was still flashes of it last year. Hopefully this year, making up for lost time, if you will, from what was the absolute nightmare of a circus hire that was Urban Meyer down in Jacksonville.
Two things. Lucas, put it on the poll. At Buck Rising is where you can vote on it. Are you allowed to toot your own horn if on the front end you say not to toot my own horn? But
I think that is the only way to toot your own horn.
No, I think Trevor Sikkema executed that successfully. Midseason form. Our guest here with us on the line. Pro Football Focus, of course, is where you can check out the work that he does. What do I do with Justin Fields? I'm made so sad. I'm just made so sad.
It's kind of rough for Fields right now because, like I said, you bring up the timeline of his rookie contract. Last year, okay, he gets the starting reps, great, but now we're going through a complete coaching change. And all right, so now we got new guys in the building. How much faith is there in Justin Fields? You look at the offensive line's behind. You look at the receivers are behind. There's not a lot of weapons to hang your hat on. This offense for Chicago is probably still a good 2, maybe 3 years away from humming, if you will, being step in step, being potential playoff caliber, because we know how important offense is. You've got teams lighting up scoreboards week in and week out. I like Matt Eberflus. I like Ryan Poles. I really do. I just don't know if they're going to be able to have the right amount of urgency now to salvage what we have with Justin Fields. And perhaps his talent makes up for all of it, and I would love to see that. But if you go into next offseason, because I know that this front office in Chicago said to themselves, we're not going to overpay for guys. We're going to stick to our principles. We're going to stick to value, and we're going to let free agent additions and drafting additions come to us. That's what they did in the draft. They showed that by drafting Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker over forcing some offensive line or some wide receiver additions. Those are the guys they liked. They picked them. They didn't make a ton of noise in free agency either because they didn't feel like that value on that offensive side was right. I like that thought process, but all of a sudden, this is the unit that Justin Fields now has for year 2 of his contract. you've got to hit wide receiver and offensive line hard next offseason, or all of a sudden you're looking at year 4 or even the 5th-year option of Justin Fields' rookie contract before you can even appropriately judge him as a quarterback, whether you want to make him an incredibly high-paid quarterback, which we know is the cost of those second contracts. So timing is everything here for the Chicago Bears. You don't have to hit the panic button yet on exactly what this front office is doing because it's early, and I do like the approach and the heads that they have on their shoulders with team building. But in terms of the Justin Fields timeline, you're getting kind of backed into a corner here. They've got to be able to act. They've got to be able to see something from him in year 2, and it's not unsalvageable. But they've got to make sure that they have a good plan and execute that plan very, very importantly moving forward, including next offseason.
At Tampa Bay, Trey is where you can follow him. What can people look forward to on today's episode with you and Connor Rogers on the NFL Stock Exchange, buddy?
Oh, man, we had a great one today. We actually took a look at Bruce Feldman's 2022 college football freak list.
Ooh.
We identified a lot of draft-eligible players that are on that list, freaked out about some of the insane reported athletic numbers from a lot of those guys around the country. It's one of the must-read pieces of sports journalism every single year, Bruce Feldman's college football freak list, and we went up and down and picked some of our favorite guys, some guys that you're going to marvel at on Saturdays in college football this summer.
Outstanding. Thank you for the time. Again, the NFL Stock Exchange available wherever you get your podcasts. Must-listen stuff there from Trevor and Connor. Buddy, I appreciate you stopping by. We're going to do it again soon, I'm certain, because it is that time of year. We appreciate you making us smarter.
Appreciate it, guys. Enjoy Bucs Titans joint practice. Appreciate it.
Well, I don't get Tom Brady, but I guess I'll settle. What are you going to do? 615-737-1045. That's Trevor Sikkema hanging out there with us. A lot of good information about just roster construction, what he's looking for from some of the younger guys getting more opportunities in the preseason right now ahead of the season. I really do feel good about the Jags. I don't know that I've ever said that in my entire existence at any point. Like, I don't know. I think there was like a David Garrard season in there that I liked the Jags with Maurice Jones-Drew, but I don't think in my professional lifetime I have said that I like the Jags.
Jags won what, 2 games, 3 games?
2.
Last season?
2, right? Because they had the weird Bills win. Who was the second win over? I feel like Urban embarrassed somebody.
They beat the Colts in the last week of the season.
That's right. That's right. I knew he embarrassed. Well,
right.
It wasn't Urban that embarrassed
It was the
him.
Colts win and in scenario where, yes. Well, they could double, maybe even triple their win total in 2022.
Well, that's like so. I guess through the context of like I'm not worried about the Jags making the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. When you say I feel good about the Jags, make sure you get the context right. That I feel good about the Jags to maybe win 6 or 7 games if things go well.
Which, by the way, is just enough to cause problems for the team that is currently on the practice field in front of us. Like, you just need to display some kind of borderline, baseline competency level for you to have an opportunity to win a game. And I believe that they're going to put Trevor Lawrence in positions to succeed with this. What'd you say to me, Brett?
So we're missing one win that I now remember when I looked up the schedule because Jacksonville remember they won the first game in 2020 in the COVID season, and then they lost every single game, and then they lost the first 5 games of last year, and then they won, but people still didn't count it because it wasn't in America. They won in London against the Dolphins.
Oh, I forgot about the Dolphins game.
We internationally outsourced the Jags as we do at least,
we sent them the 2 bad Florida teams.
We do that. I mean, consistently. That is the case. Yes. That was Uncle Herb's first victory, right?
Right. It was
Correct.
in London. Yeah.
At home in London for the Jacksonville Jags. Yeah. I guess the context that I'm going to put it in is, if you ask me, hey, what team do you want to watch on Game Pass on a Tuesday afternoon after you finish, reviewing the Titans game? So I might want to see what the Jags did this week. I'd just be generally curious to see what Trevor Lawrence looks like in this offense and just the exciting proposition of young quarterback talent succeeding in ways that they are completely undermining Justin Fields.
Yeah, nothing makes a dysfunctional franchise more entertaining than young quarterback talent. The only reason the Jags are interesting this year is because Trevor Lawrence.
And it doesn't even have to be that, right? We spent a whole, season and a half talking about Gardner Minshew's mustache, and he wasn't even that good. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Speaking of things that are not good, well, if you're a Tennessee fan, you probably are very much enjoying this. There has been a hilarious amount of inter-office bickering at one SEC school. They're doing it publicly, which is why everybody knows about it. We're going to talk about it coming up next. school, nobody in any other time period in the history of Kentucky athletics would dispute that Kentucky basketball should be given all of the things that it needs, and then everybody else figure it out after the fact, because Kentucky is, in fact, a basketball school. But the fact that it's even a conversation, the fact that Mark Stoops, the head coach of Kentucky football, is out here, clearly displeased, and rightfully so, because they have been competitive in the SEC in his tenure, and they really have revitalized that program. Then you've got the athletic director. What's his name, Lucas?
Mitch Barnhart.
Mitch Barnhart. Brett, do we have the audio of Mitch Barnhart, who I just want to make fun of?
I'll find it.
Brett will find it shortly. I apologize, Brett. I thought that you had it back there. Either way, their athletic director, with some of the most lazy excuse-making for why his two coaches are currently publicly feuding with one another, is egregious. The whole thing has to warm the souls of Tennessee fans just because you like to see anything at the expense of the University of Kentucky happen. If it can't be on the football field or the basketball court or any number of athletic competitions where the Vols and Kentucky compete, I think people are really, really enjoying this. I certainly am.
They're both right.
They are.
John Calipari is right. Kentucky is, without question, a basketball school. When you think Kentucky athletics, you think about Kentucky basketball. But Mark Stoops is right, saying, why shouldn't we get the best facilities on campus? Who generates more money? Kentucky football or Kentucky basketball? Easy answer. It's Kentucky football.
Which I think that might, if you're not familiar with general budgeting as far as the athletic programs are concerned, I think people might be surprised to hear that fact. That Kentucky football out-earns Kentucky basketball. I think you may have just caught people off guard by saying that, even as we know that football is the primary revenue generator for so many different things. But we'll get back to that. So it's Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director at the University of Kentucky, telling us what the actual problem between his two coaches is.
You're supposed to be teaching young people. And the lessons that we're teaching them is what? The adults can't get it right? Come on. We're better than that.
Mics are off.
We're in Kentucky.
Come on. We're better than that. That's not even the one that I had seen going viral about him blaming the media for all the ills. It's just when you don't have a better excuse for why your staff is misbehaving, we'll go ahead and blame the media, because nobody likes the media. Admittedly so. Nobody likes us. It's fine. That's our burden to bear. But it's just when you see people using that kind of a crutch just as for no other reason than they don't know how to get a handle on themselves and their internal conflicts, and they need spin, we'll blame the media.
Yeah, it is very funny because I think Coach Calipari's answer to that, talking about, well, we're a basketball school. Alabama's a football school. Georgia's a football school. Kentucky is a basketball school. He's demanding a new practice facility. But he went on a 10-minute tangent when he was asked that question by Kyle Tucker of The Athletic. He said those words.
We should probably have called Kyle. I didn't think about that until just now. Kyle's been covering all this nonsense. We probably should have called Kyle.
It's like Jimbo Fisher at SEC Media Days when he's asked about the little spat with Nick Saban, and Jimbo says, well, nothing's private anymore with the media nowadays. Jimbo, you called your own press conference. What are you talking about? You were the media in that scenario. It was you.
It's just, listen, media is guilty of this. Coaches are guilty of this. Politicians are guilty of this. You go at things based on your own agenda, and you project what you believe the preconceived notions are, or you pick something and you hammer it because you know it's a winning position. This is a successful platform across many different job entities and many different public platforms. Certainly, though, Mitch Barnhart just leaning full into it.
Yeah.
Just goobers.
He does sound like a governing parent, kind of like Greg Sankey did.
Stop it.
Between Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher. What are we doing?
No,
what does this accomplish?
But Greg Sankey knew that his words mean enough that he could accomplish it in a press release. Mitch Barnhart's having to Jimbo Fisher it out here. He's having to call his own press conferences and then blame the media.
The best part is, too, he basically made it clear, no, a new practice facility is not on the agenda for Kentucky basketball. Sorry, Cal, make more money than Mark Stoops.
That's right.
And then we'll, as far as your program generating more revenue, then we'll have a conversation. Kentucky's still a basketball school, but Kentucky football, makes more money.
They do have their own basketball player dorms. This is something that the University of Kentucky has. But in the meantime, it's just a cat fight, literally a cat fight, taking place on campus between the coaches.
Like, this is not like the 50s where Bear Bryant left Kentucky because he wanted them to focus more on football than they did basketball. I think Bear Bryant was the one that made the joke after an SEC title-winning season. Adolph Rupp gets a Cadillac and he gets a cigarette lighter. Like those days are gone. with television money now and the way the revenue is generated, it's all football, baby. You can still be a basketball school. That's okay, but it ain't where the majority of the money's coming from.
All football all the time, as was just told to us by every college athletic administrator and school president, university president in the country, by nature of the way that college football is before our very eyes, changing quite rapidly. Titans still on the practice field. They'll wrap things up probably in the next 20 to 30 minutes. We will be joined directly after they wrap up practice by wide receiver Robert Woods. So when we come back, we're going to preview that position in its entirety. A lot of interesting camp battles and some information on one of the guys who I think we all considered to be a roster lock, not having a very good day today. We'll tell you who that is and get into the wide receivers. Coming up next, I'm Buck Rising, live from Titans training camp. It's 104.5 The Zone. Alan Kirby. I don't know where Will Bowling is, but I know that he's here. Mike Keith surveying his domain out on the practice fields at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Waving us off, nodding us off as we hang out here for the next couple of hours. Robert Wood's going to be here in just about probably 15, 20 minutes whenever Mike Vrabel decides the practice is going to end for the day. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about these wide receivers, because I think that competition is something that becomes more and more interesting every day when you kind of see where they are competing at. Kyle Phillips and Mason Kinsey is no longer a competition. Now the competition is between Mason Kinsey and Terry Godwin to see, okay, can this player give us enough on special teams as well as offensively to justify a roster spot, or in a more likely situation, practice squad as they start to figure these things out. Remember that the NFL's first cut deadline comes tomorrow at 3 p.m. Central Time. I believe the Titans have to shed about 5 guys based on where the roster is right now. So where do those bodies come from? What position group? And the wide receiver, when you're looking at guys who are competing the inside, Godwin, Kinsey, and Phillips, like we talked about, guys competing on the outside primarily with Racey McMath, Josh Malone, and Dez Fitzpatrick. You know who you've likely got in Robert Woods, Nick Westbrook-Akina, Treylon Burks, although the consistency is something that the head coach and wide receivers coach Rob Moore spoke to us about this morning. On the whole, though, training camp being the largest sample size that we've had of all of these guys, and I know some missed opportunities both on the end of the quarterbacks and on the wide receivers in the preseason game on Thursday, I largely feel confident in the quality of player that they have and the developments that have taken place with a guy like Racey. Now, Racey hasn't been particularly sharp today, it sounds like, based on the reporting of the great one, Jimmy Wyatt. Mike Keith nodding in approval there. Teron Davenport also documenting the kind of day that Racey has had. This has been something that he's been a bit of a star is too strong a word, but he's really, really come on in training camp, and so
he's forced us to talk about him almost every day.
Which is what it's all you're trying to get the coaches to do, just force them to make a difficult decision. Now, I think that he is likely to be on the final 53, and we have no idea how injuries are going to impact this thing and how many different maturations of depth chart predictions will come out between now and the start of the season. But with Racey, Fitzpatrick, and Malone, I just don't think that Josh Malone's performance has been good enough. I think he's been fine, but I don't think it's good enough to bump a guy like Racey or even Dez, who's likely on the outside looking in as a draft pick, because they're all kind of on the same plane with Racey having the biggest upside.
With Malone, it's kind of been the opposite, right? He hasn't given us that reason to talk about him when we're sitting here recapping practice notes after practice has concluded at the facility.
I don't know that that's fair. Like, I noticed Josh Malone on the field. I noticed Josh Malone, and he consistently makes plays in the 11-on-11 and 7-on-7 drills. It's just I don't know how thin the margin for error is for a guy like that, given that the other two were drafted and that he's just kind of he's been a fringe NFL roster guy basically since he came into the league out of Tennessee.
That's a guy that was playing late into the preseason game in Baltimore, ended up with 1 target, 0 catches, and the Titans have already started to shed some names. That first one to go was over the weekend, right? Brandon Lewis, the former Air Force receiver.
Correct.
They waive a receiver without picking up a receiver, so you're already starting to see that room get whittled down little by little, and I agree with you. I think Malone and Fitzpatrick will be kind of scrapping sort of near the bottom of that list.
So, Mike Vrabel, the Titans had practice on Saturday and Sunday. We were out here. Mike spoke to the media on Saturday, and he was asked, I believe, by the great Teresa Walker of the Associated Press about the stuff that he is seeing currently from the wide receiver competition, and this is what the head coach had to say.
Inconsistent. I really, and I wish that I would have an opportunity to talk to Treylon. And I don't think this is going to be anything earth-shattering, but just being able to take the progress, some of the improvements that we saw in practice and carry them over to the game. And that I don't think happened.
Mics are off.
And so, but he was, just talking to Craig Aukerman and Chase, that he was out there. He was active on special teams. He wanted to block on kickoff return. He wanted to be a part of that. I think there were some really positive things as far as our special teams units that we can build off. There were some guys that, young guys that we said that they needed to be productive and show up. Chig played with great effort. Hassan played well on special teams, showed up and just improved on some of these young guys that maybe that wasn't their prime.
10 seconds.
Trying to take that next step. So those are all part of the evaluation process. So we'll need to see.
Turn your mic up.
Week and, keep having a great attitude.
That was Mike Vrabel on Saturday, speaking more specifically about Treylon Burks and the wide receiver competition as a whole. And, special teams it allows them to kind of assess the fundamental things that they're looking for right now in the preseason. Obviously, you want to know the playbook. You want to see the chemistry that's built and what Vrabel talked about there carrying over the days that Burks has done well in training camp to stack. You'd like to see that materialize more in his first live game action. Now, I can't remember if it was Mike that we were talking to or Todd Downing yesterday about, this being the first NFL action for some of these guys, and you're just kind of, you're working through, even if it is preseason, a little bit of jitters, even, guys who have played in the Big Ten and the SEC and all this at the Pac-12. Like, the moment is not too big for them, but it's just a first experience that you're kind of looking to see how they handle it. And I think when you heard Vrabel talk about not just Treylon that way, but in kind of the things that they were looking for from Des Fitzpatrick, where they're not concerned about the effort that he's giving and the urgency that he's giving, but Mike cited specifically, okay, run blocking. If you're going to be on this roster, we know this, Derrick Henry is going to be, the running backs and the running game is going to be such a heavily featured part of this. If you are going to be basically on the same level with the rest of these guys, how can you improve your position and make a roster spot? Well, you can show the proficiency required to break Derrick Henry on those big gains that we've seen A.J. Brown do so well and Corey Davis do so well. Nick Westbrook-Akina has really kind of embraced that, and it's why that he has lasted here as long as he has, which has given him the appropriate amount of time to develop. So while I think the larger conversation around wide receivers, there's always going to be, well, what did they do enough to replace A.J. Brown? Is it enough without A.J. Brown? They're not as talented without A.J. Brown. And you acknowledge all of these things, right? We saw literally in San Francisco, A.J. and Tannehill go out there and win them a game. That's not easy to replicate. But as far as a ground-level consistency is concerned, I think they have more options, more parts and pieces to kind of play with, so you're not so heavily dependent on that one guy, because that is what it felt was kind of the thing that held them back offensively outside of the protection issues and all the things that we've documented at great length.
So they're looking for certain things out of certain guys,
Buck,
right? Like
audio.
with Des Fitzpatrick, it's on blocking, and especially in the red zone, being able to utilize that big body. And then other players with traits that they know they have, like Racey McMath, what did we talk about all of last year about the reason why he was on the roster?
Special teams.
Right, just special teams. So we knew he had that coming into this year. He's just continued to layer that with being a deep play threat and using that big physical presence in the end zone throughout training camp. And he showed more value as a kick returner. I don't think we had seen him get work as a kick returner before that preseason game in Baltimore. So Racey McMath has continued to just add value to his name. It's the reason we keep talking about him. And for Des Fitzpatrick, it feels like they're still looking for that aspect of his game to develop faster, right, when it comes to blocking and in the red zone.
We've gotten some questions just kind of throughout the course of training camp about like UDFA guys that have surprised or maybe fringe candidates to make the roster. I think Reggie Robertson's name is one that comes up often because he was one of the most recognizable collegiate players.
SMU.
To be signed in the undrafted free agent process. He didn't play against Baltimore. I think they said that he was working through some stuff, which is about as much injury information as they're ever going to provide. All well and good, but those missed opportunities for him, I haven't seen him separate. I did not see Brandon Lewis necessarily separating. He's already off the roster, but those kind of guys, there hasn't been that that moment, that kind of moment of zen where you say, okay, this, like for David, I'm gonna butcher his last name. I have every time. Rip Ryan has told me so many times how to pronounce David Anaya's last name. I think that is the proper pronunciation of the undrafted rookie free agent edge guy that they've had. He's been that player so far. He's shown that he's willing and able to play on special teams. Vrabel said he flashed on the edge in the preseason game and certainly was able to, try and do his part even as the score was out of hand at that point and the turnover differential was lost, to continue to try and put good effort and finish on film that allowed him to have the kind of sacks that he did.
Okay, then what about, not an undrafted rookie, but what about a Terry Godwin, who catches more passes in that game in Baltimore than any other player on the roster, that shows off a nice kick return getting to midfield, that gets called back, no fault of his own, penalty, holding on the play. Terry Godwin, if you're going to...
Yeah, Justin Lawler, man. You gotta let Terry have that return. That's a tough penalty to take
If you're going to pick out those names, that's what we think to be the bottom of the list, you can go ahead and pluck Brandon Lewis's name off of there. He's been waived. But right now with Terry Godwin, Mason Kinsey, and Josh Malone and Des Fitzpatrick, just taking those four, who of those four has shown the most throughout training camp? We know who showed the most in that preseason game. It was Terry Godwin. But between he and, say, Des Fitzpatrick, I don't know. Like, who would you say has flashed more between those guys?
Well, I mean, Des, I just, I see the kind of things from Des. And he had a good practice. I think this was on Saturday. I talked to him for a little bit. Perhaps we'll play that audio later in the show. But, for Des, to me, it's just been okay. It's a slower learning curve than a former fourth-round pick should have, especially for a guy who did not make the active roster out of training camp last year. I think just by volume, Godwin I have noticed most. But even then, I think it comes down to personal preference. I happen to know that the front office staff loves Mason Kinsey. Loves him. And rightfully so. He will go above and beyond to give the best possible scout team look as he humanly can. It's not necessarily about what he provides in the game, although they have to have some kind of base level functionality for that too. But I think at that point you're just kind of doing personal preferences, on who the coaching staff knows, who the front office is comfortable with, who they know if they're going to put in these positions is going to do all the dirty work things that a bottom of the roster guy like that has to do. And I know that they love Mason Kinsey. I don't know how strongly they feel about Terry Godwin, but I think that they are. Mike talked about him a little bit after the game. And I think that, again, by volume, that you're seeing him get more and more opportunities, which is indicative that he's doing the work that he needs to do to get targeted that way, to get those playing time reps in the preseason game.
Which is all that we can see, right? We're not in the meeting rooms. We don't know how they're
I haven't figured out how to hack the wide receiver room yet.
Right.
We're still working on it.
We haven't hacked their computer where they're watching tape. We have not planted that bug. So there's a lot that we don't know about this competition. We just talk about what we can see.
Well, technically, we do have our own plan. He's sitting to my right. He is Kirby Allen Kirby. Perhaps he will go on his own special embedded mission into the bowels of Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park at some point throughout the course of the day's broadcast. Titans still on the practice field. Robert Woods is going to join us here in the next 20 minutes. Stick right there. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans.
Buck Country Financial.
Yep.
Season game. And it's against Tom Brady and the
is powered by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling. Visit springhillac.com.
Most certainly is. springhillac.com, making all things possible during these 3 hours, including our training camp interviews, one of which will be Robert Woods, wide receiver who's going to join us as soon as he concludes his post-practice routine, because practice has officially concluded for the day. Titans off the field tomorrow, and then joint practices with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will begin on Wednesday and into Thursday before the preseason game. Welcome back. 615-737-1045. You can jump in if you like. Will Bowling has been here and observing things at practice. What did you observe today, William?
Hello.
Hello. Good
hello.
God,
Very
hello.
Loud. I came over here to the table telling you I had a very spicy special teams update for you. I will begin with the headline, which is that Randy Bullock was 5 for 8 today, missing 3 in a row to finish off the kicking drill, and his holder was Ryan Stonehouse.
That is a spicy nugget.
Not Brett Kern. And then with Ryan Stonehouse, he had his worst day kicking the football. So I think both of these things in conjunction together are noteworthy.
All right, so here's the thing. Because we talked to Ackerman yesterday, I think. We talked to Craig Ackerman, their special teams coach, yesterday. He said he thought that Randy had missed 3 kicks all of camp. And based on documentation, that was correct. Now, in changing the holding situation today for him to have that big of a struggle, this is the time where you want to test those things out and where those struggles would be evident. Unfortunately for them, we're all just hovering over everything that they do to watch them and document this with great importance.
The misses were 43, 50, and 53, according to A to Z Sports.
Those are the money zone. Can't be missing the money zone.
Doinked one of them.
Between 40 and 49. You said what, Kirby? I'm sorry?
He hit 2 dozen from varying from there clear out to here when he was on that by himself with the little pod.
Yeah.
Nailed every damn one of them through the middle of the small upright.
And with Kern, he's not had those struggles. So that was a question when Gostkowski was here, because and Gostkowski had a different situation. He was coming in off I believe hip surgery when they signed him ahead of the 2020 season. And then the Denver game went the way that it went, and there were struggles earlier rather than later. But there was an initial conversation about, okay, is it a situation where Bo is snapping the snaps too low, former long snapper Bo Brinkley? Is it a situation with him and Kern on the mechanics of the hold? Even though Brett Kern's been doing this for 15 years at this point, that is not insignificant with how difficult it has been for the Titans to nail down the kicking situation. Anything that would jeopardize Randy, I think they are not going to take additional risks, even if he can punt it from 60 yards out.
We talked about it Friday, right? I mean, Ryan Stonehouse as a holder. That was the one aspect of his game that we have not really talked about. All we've said is ridiculous hang time, a booming leg, but there's a lot more that goes into it. And we mentioned Friday, how is he as a holder? We don't know that. We haven't seen him get the work in, and there you go.
There it was today. Not ideal. 5 of 8, right. You said?
Yes, 5 of 8.
All right. What else did you learn?
Probably the worst day the offense has had at camp so far.
Ooh.
I can pretty confidently say that.
Well, that'll be interesting to talk to Robert Woods about.
Things did not improve really until the final 2-minute period, where Titans had 0 timeouts starting from their own 25 with 1:20 left. They needed the 35 for a field goal. Ryan Tannehill did lead them down the field for a 51-yard Randy Bullock game-winning field goal as time expired. Offense did a good job. Special teams unit did a good job sprinting on the field. That call they have when they don't have timeouts, the ball hasn't been clocked and the clock is moving. Did a good job getting on the field, making that kick with a lot of speed. But other than that, really the offense was bad. Caleb Farley was really good today. Probably the biggest that he has flashed in team periods. I want to say he had 3 pass breakups to be exact. All of them were against first-team offense. Treylon Burks continues to kind of disappear a little bit. Really haven't seen him. He did have 1 catch today from Malik Willis in the second-team 2-minute period. And the headline of that is that Malik Willis was getting most of the second-team reps today, which has not been the case previously. I would say it's probably a 60-40 split. Woodside was still getting a lot of second-team reps as the next guy up after Ryan Tannehill. But we didn't see Malik Willis running out of the pocket much today. It seemed like they
sit in there and throw,
they
damn it.
wanted him to even I think they would rather him throw interceptions and stand in the pocket right now than roll out, take 10 seconds when you're actually being sacked in live action and throw it out of bounds or overthrow somebody on the run. So that was what the offense looked like today.
It reminds me – excellent work by you.
Thank you.
Well done. It reminds me of talking to Ryan Crow, the outside linebackers coach, last year about Harold Landry. And there was a consistent narrative about Harold. Okay, how does he develop a second move? How does he get away from just primarily leaning on the speed rush to kind of become a more well-rounded pass rusher? Now, Harold obviously did that, but what Crow told us last year at this time was they weren't letting him use the speed rush. Like they said, okay, find other ways to win. And that, I think, is kind of, the same premise for what you're looking for Malik. Find other ways to win from the pocket other than the natural reaction, which is to drop your eyes, make a play because you're faster than the other guy. Because now you're not as fat, you're not as clearly and obviously faster or more athletic than the other guy. That's not a situation that he can afford to continue to kind of default to, and habits that he needs to correct because, as we talked to Trevor Sikkema about earlier, the offensive line at Liberty was terrible. So if you're going to learn to win from the pocket, it was certainly not going to be at his alma mater last season. I want to hear, Brett, let me know when you have it, the clip from Todd Downing yesterday about the backup quarterback competition. The Titans offensive coordinator was asked about that. We met with Bowen, Aukerman, and Downing before practice concluded. Todd Downing was asked, I believe, by Ben Arthur about what he needs to see from both Logan Woodside and Malik Willis. This was the OC's assessment.
Yeah, ultimately, your backup quarterback needs to be somebody that can run the game plan on a moment's notice, right? And that means different things for those two players. There's certainly aspects of Malik's game that if he were playing for us, we'd try to amplify or augment. And there's certain things that Logan does very well that we would be able to augment as well. Consistency and dependability in their decision-making is critical. Putting the ball in harm's way, is something that a backup quarterback can't do. And we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can, not only from a pocket ball security, but also throw location and decision-making. They got to be able to take care of that football and, keep the offense flowing as if Ryan were in there.
So that's offensive coordinator Todd Downing speaking about what he needs to see from both Logan Woodside and Malik Willis as they compete for the role of backup quarterback. And that is completely and totally the kind – I mean, it's just base-level functionality. You want to make sure that you're taking care of the football. That was something, obviously, that as a unit they did not necessarily do well. You had the Julius Chestnut fumble and the 2 interceptions. But that's the coaching points that they are looking for. That's the kind of stuff that they're honing in on right now at this time. So practice is wrapped up for the day. Robert Woods is sitting down here with us at the desk after coming off the practice field, getting a little extra work in. What's going on, stud? We're happy to have you.
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me. A great working day out here today in Titans camp. Feeling good, getting better each day.
Excellent. So for the offense, maybe not necessarily as crisp as you might have wanted it to look collectively, and that not just the first team, but on down the line. What are kind of the corrections that you saw after you go through team drill, after you go through 2-minute and things like that you kind of wanted to hone in on today, or that you guys will after the fact?
Yeah, I think today was a great camp day. It was wins on both sides of the ball. It seemed very competitive. Everything was contested on offense or defense. Guys making plays all around, and that's what you want on the training camp day. Guys picking up the intensity, making plays, whether it's downfield, even in the run game. But this is what you want. You want a competitive camp. Guys competing, making the rep, challenging each and every time. Oh,
it's about to get a lot more real here on Wednesday and Thursday when you guys have actual, opponents to go against rather than facing each other on a regular basis, and kind of getting a little bit of a fresh look against NFL starting caliber offenses and defensive special teams as well. For you, having been through these things a variety of different times, what is kind of the focus on that work specifically?
For the starters, this is the closest we're going to get, it seems like, to a game rep. And I know when the guys coming in from other teams, this is their chance to try to make their team and leave an impression on two teams now. So guys are coming in here playing with very high intensity all around the ball. So I love when you bring these joint practices in. It feels like the closest thing to a game. Referees are a little bit more lenient, a lot more talking going on.
Will they give you the phantom PI like Vrabel does?
Oh, no. I mean, it'll be talking back and forth, but that's the only call you're going to get. But like I said, it's fun. It's football. It's like you were when you're playing a kid, just going out there and competing, getting talk trash and make plays and get to do it again.
Titans wide receiver Robert Woods hanging out with us all after their practice is concluded, wrapping up for the day, at least the on-field portion. I'm sure there's much more work to be done. You laugh there.
Sure, yeah, for sure. We're just getting started. It's still early.
So I think the audience doesn't necessarily have a concept or an idea of what that may look like, because I think they know that you guys go through practice. They know that there's a certain amount of time that you're allotted to. But kind of what does the rest of the day look like just from your day to day?
Yeah, I know a lot of people think football players is just, you just practice for 2 hours and then you're free.
That's right.
Man, it's truly like professionalism that comes with this. You got to be here early. You're starting in the weight room, breaking down film for the practice. In our first meeting, getting ready to take the field, warm up, warm your bodies, run through it mentally. Get out here, go 2 hours, get an hour and a half, break, rest. And you ride into meetings watching that film for a few hours. And then you go into film preparation for the next day. Then you're off, and when you're at home, you're planning for that next day mentally, getting ready again, making sure your body's right, and making sure you're well rested to do it again and do it again.
That's not something that just comes naturally. Like, that is so regimented, and that's that's such a big part of your guys' lives anyway, from whatever level of football you started playing onto the professional level that you've made it to now, and obviously successfully through about the course of the last decade of your career. Who kind of instilled that process in you? Because I know you've been working with Rob Moore long before you got here to Tennessee, but as far as kind of influences on you that way, who kind of taught you what that process was going to look like? Because that's something that is well regarded about you. I know that it's uncomfortable to talk about yourself in those kind of ways, but that's something that I think people really draw on when they talk about you and the kind of approach that you take to your job.
Yeah, really, I would say always just wanted to be the guy to, do extra, study film, know your opponent. But really coming to L.A. and just getting in that offense, grasping a little bit more of the passing offense, and really being able to, work your craft and hone your craft, you get an opportunity to really study other receivers, study yourself, and learn what works and know who you are as a player. And then you start watching the film, watching the defenses, and how to expose the gaps in the zones in the defense, because it's something that you already went through on the practice field or went through mentally because you're constantly studying and stuff like that. So really just being able to, I guess, be more involved in the passing game has just brought that attention to detail out.
With preseason going on right now, and obviously most of the vets not really taking part in the actual preseason game itself, do you guys, the focus as far as corrections are concerned when you're watching film, how much of it is, okay, we're going to watch what happened to the preseason game, you're going to see what went wrong, what you need to work on, this is going to be the focal point in practice, versus how much of the actual practice reps that you're studying? Like, how much time spent versus practice and preseason game type tape, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, a little bit of it all. I mean, we're still trying to work to build our team. We're studying, need to know the guy's going to be at the right spot, do the right assignment, so we are watching that film and making those corrections. But as vets who aren't playing in the game, these are opportunities to take mental reps and not make those mistakes when we get the opportunity to go out there and play. And really a lot of the mistakes that happen are this can't happen in a game situation. So really you got to hone in on it, and it's attention to detail. So when you come out there and even take it to the practice field, you're working on being perfect. So you go out there in the game, if you get a certain look, you know how to already work it because you worked on that perfection. You worked on firing off the ball. At that point, it's just reacting to what the defense gives you.
I know it's all ball all the time basically right now, but are you enjoying the city? You settling in well?
Yeah, I am. I feel like that time's over right now. It's football time. But
I know, we had Treylon last week. I was like, you found any good fishing spots yet? He goes, no fishing, just football. It's like, okay, buddy, so it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, when I got traded here, I mean, we were enjoying Nashville, going out, finding places to eat, really just trying to just learn about the city, kind of going everywhere, seeing different parts of Nashville. And now, I mean, it's all about the season. We're all looking forward to September 11th, getting out there and playing our first game. It's training camp time. Once you get in this zone and this aspect, it's all about football, and our families know it too. This is season.
With Ryan and the time that you guys have gotten to spend and grow as teammates, what's one thing that you learned about Ryan Tannehill since arriving here that you didn't know? Obviously, you know the player, you know what he's done in the league, but now that you're his teammate, what do you kind of know about him that you didn't know prior?
Obviously, he's a very, very accurate quarterback. I'm seeing with some of these throws he's making out here at practice and even on the film is truly amazing. He's dropping in, always giving his receiver a chance to make the play. And I would say I knew that he was competitive, but seeing him out here in person and just seeing how he loves to compete, he's going to try to keep the play alive, scrambling, making the downfield throw anywhere. He wants to win. You see it in his nature, how he attacks practice, how he attacks the walkthroughs. He takes it real serious. He's relying on all 11 guys on the offensive side, and really just he wants to win, and you can see it how he takes pride in his work.
Yeah, I think everybody assumes that football players are competitive, but until you see like how bent out of shape somebody gets out after like a practice rep or a missed opportunity or just a miscue on a route concept or something like that, like it is kind of funny to see Ryan get a little up in it.
Yeah, I mean it just shows how bad you want it. You got a quarterback who's out here doing his job, the line protects, and if he's expecting a receiver at a certain spot and he throws it there and we're not there, he's on us. It's one of those things where we're like I said, we're counting on everybody to be at the right spot at the right time. And if that one person is not there, he's definitely going to hold you accountable, as we all are. But, like, when you hear from your quarterback and you hear him getting on you, somebody who's working his butt off, it means a lot for your quarterback to be able to speak up and have a voice for this whole team.
Titans wide receiver Robert Woods is here with us. We'll let you go on this one. For the so many young skill position players that you guys have on the roster, not only in the wide receiver room, but just kind of on the whole, how beneficial can it be not to just have somebody like you who's been through the league in several different spots, learned several different playbooks, and found ways to adapt and kind of refine your craft, but for a quarterback like that to be that demanding, that specific, for the young guys, it seems like that would be hugely beneficial at the start of their careers.
Yeah, I would say so. Really, it just comes off with playing fast. You have a quarterback who's going to be able to take care of most of the work of getting the ball there. From other spots, it's just know what you're doing and play fast. Don't have to think much. When you're thinking, you're out there playing a little bit slow. For our young guys in the backfield and in the receiver position, tight end is play fast, know what you're doing, and everything else will take care of itself.
All right, no free ads, but you said you tried some restaurants. You have a spot you like so far in town?
Oh,
well, actually, maybe we don't give that away. I don't want people.
Yeah. I don't have a go-to, but
I get your Yelp review off the air.
I don't have a go-to, but we're trying everything around. Everything. We're trying everything.
It was a dumb question by me. I realized that in real time. I'm like, oh, that's probably if he's enjoying it, I should probably not spoil it for him.
Nashville has a lot to offer, all type of varieties. We've been learning. So don't have a favorite yet. It's still early, but we'll see what tops the charts.
Thanks for hanging out, Robert.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's Robert Woods, Titans wide receiver. Players at the podium will go out to the press conferences live at St. Thomas Sports Park. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Thanks, Robert. Buck.
Hey, appreciate it, man.
Derrick Henry just went 60.
15 seconds.
Zone. Kirby aghast at the Michael Jackson. Why are you complaining about Michael Jackson? What happened?
Overplayed.
Okay. Well, that's.
I'd like to apologize too because I just now saw Kirby's text that said come back with a specific song. So I'll do that
Kirby
in the next
had
hour.
a song request.
Oh, so you had instruction that you just flat ignored. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, I did not ignore.
Apparently, he's not afraid of me as much as Lucas. Lucas is afraid of you.
Well, I don't think Lucas is afraid of me.
Oh, terrified.
The text
I'm afraid of
text
you,
came through
Kirby.
right as we came back from break. So,
Kirby, I can't see you through the haze of cigarette smoke. Oh, goodness. Yeah. So next time he sends you a song, Brett, play it or else he'll put the cigarette out on you.
Here, this is for me.
That's why we don't have interns anymore.
I'm
Kirby
going back
kept
to the
putting
shadows
cigarettes
now.
out. on
I'll
him.
leave. I'll leave.
He's taking a swig of Pepsi right now, so I can talk trash to him. Maybe not.
Oh no, he's turning me up.
Okay,
not
very
himself.
good. All right.
Yeah.
Hi, bud.
Hello.
Will Bowling is here too.
Voice in your head that just won't go away.
Yeah, he's that. So, the AP Top 25 is out. Not the coach's preseason poll. Don't give a damn about that. Those are like the top 100s in the NFL for the players. I don't care. Those guys aren't taking it seriously. They're not watching it as in-depth as I would want them to be able to give us expertise and analysis. Now, no shocker that Alabama tops the preseason poll for the – wait, now, that's not the 9th consecutive time, is it? That can't be right. 9 straight? That can't be right.
Not 9th straight.
7th in 15 years.
Still, that's outrageous.
Yeah, I think they mean 9th all time since the inception of the AP.
Really, really good. So the breakdown goes this way: 6 in the ACC, or rather 6 in the SEC, 5 for the ACC, which is a lot more than honestly I anticipated. Big Ten has 4, Big 12 3, Pac-12 3, the American 2, and of course the Independents coming in with 2 as well. Nothing there that would outright shock you. It would seem your top 4, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson rounding out the top 4. If you want to go top 5, Notre Dame in the first year under Marcus Freeman is the 5th ranked, or will be the 5th ranked team coming into the start of college football. By the way, is it week 0?
No, that will be not this Saturday, but next Saturday.
What the hell was Pate talking about? He's tweeting me the other day, I don't have to care about Tom Brady not being out here because it's college football season. What's he talking about?
Well,
it's always college football.
It is college football. It's always college football.
What
are you talking about?
It makes me belly laugh when I see the picture that he tweets every Saturday of him looking out of the cornfield with his hand over his head as if he's trying to see something. 1 more, 2 more, 3 more Saturdays.
One more Saturday.
To be fair, that's the way he looks at you when we analyze the holder competition at Tennessee Titans training camp.
Yeah,
like
fair.
He belly laughs at you, talking about the backup center battle that's going on at any given Titans training camp.
Hell, if you need 5 minutes of backup center talk, Will knows.
We've done this before.
Worth noting, Alabama has only won 1 national title in a season where they were ranked number 1 in the preseason poll. It was 2017, the 2017 season, when they beat Georgia in the national championship, Tua Tagovailoa to Devontae Smith.
I would say to you that it is a stat worth saying. How applicable it is to the actual success of the football team, probably inconsequential, especially when Nick Saban has already called last season a rebuilding year, and now they're just going to rip everybody's heads off.
Yep.
Like I don't.
He's right.
He is literally correct.
It's so gross.
It was a rebuilding year for them. Texas A&M comes in as the 6th team in the country. Utah 7th, Michigan 8th, and Oklahoma stays in the top 10 at number 9 as they start a new era with Brent Venables and a completely overhauled roster. And the Vols on the outside looking in, receiving enough votes to be at that 26th spot, just 1 shy of the AP Top 25.
Good. So Kentucky's 20, just making its first preseason poll appearance since 1978. I think Vegas likes. Will is laughing.
That's
openly.
hilarious.
Laughing openly at the
Football
tackle
school.
at the
The
tackle
Kentucky.
cats.
The
Hey,
football school.
listen, he's not entirely wrong, based on where the money trail lies. Now, 26th best team in the country. I think that's fair without having seen Tennessee perform this year. I'm not butthurt about it. I'm not bent out of shape about it. I don't think Vols fans, if they're being super realistic, Who was the wide receiver talking about this is going to be the best offense in college football?
Unfortunately, it was Jalen Hyatt who said that over the weekend. It's not that's a bold strategy, Cotton.
I saw that clip, and I
cringed.
Belly laughed because I'm like, oh, this kid he is setting himself up for tremendous failure should a Vols thing that always happen to this football team at any given point.
Interesting to see NC State as high as they are, the number 13 team in the country. A lot of hype there as they return their quarterback situation, what was a very good season last year under Dave Doran. And Miami, very highly thought of right now as the number 16 team in the country in year one of Mario Cristobal.
I feel like that's appropriate for NC State. I feel like I have talked more about the Wolfpack's football program this college football season than at any. Now, there may be other reasons why that's been the case, but I feel that is when you look at who is going to push Clemson, if anybody is going to push Clemson in the ACC, we have talked a great deal about North Carolina. I don't think 13 is any kind of a surprise, although it is being called. I'm reading the ESPN article right now. They're put North Carolina, Pitt, Kentucky, and Wake Forest in the rarities and streaks category, which would not necessarily lend itself to a resume of consistency as a top 25 team. But I think the distribution makes sense. Again, I need the full list of ACC teams that made the top 25.
Well, you've got Wake Forest as the number 22 team in the country, Pitt, the number 17 team in the country, of course, the defending champs, and NC State. You said there were how many?
There were 5, so I'm missing one.
And then Clemson.
Clemson I counted.
And then the 5th would be?
I don't see it on the
list.
list.
Did you say Pittsburgh?
We did say
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. I mean, it's Wake Forest. It's Pitt. It's
Miami.
Miami.
We literally just talked about Miami.
Talking about him.
And thanks for listening.
Interesting that the Week 1 matchup in Atlanta will be between the number 3 and 11 teams in the country, with Georgia taking on Oregon. Dan Lanning, in his first year at Oregon, just outside of the top 10. Before we do hit this break, there is some big breaking news out of Baton Rouge.
Is it laser light sound show worthy?
I don't think it's quite that, but I will say that Christian Garrick is reporting that LSU quarterback Miles Brennan is walking away from football. A source has told him that Brennan was informed he will not be the starting quarterback this fall. One would imagine that means that the Arizona State transfer, Jaden Daniels, has locked up that job.
Just straight up leaving.
Walking away from football
is
the report. Not transferring, not going into the portal, just retiring. Miles Brennan, who has taken a lot of snaps.
He was in the portal
as the quarterback at LSU.
Did he just not get any looks in the portal?
He went into the portal, came right back out.
That's also why I didn't play college football. I just walked away from football.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just chose it on my own accord.
Lucas too, apparently based on the punt fielding proficiency or lack thereof.
I've been in the portal since approximately 9:52 a.m.
I meant to ask Robert Woods whether he would have cut you or not. But anyway, we'll talk about who performed well at practice today. You'll hear from head coach Mike Vrabel. Caleb Farley showed out. You'll hear from the head coach on that specifically. Jimmy Wyatt will be here as well. Final hour up next. Buck Rising live with you from Titans training camp on 104.5 The Zone.
Buck Spring Hill in 20.
Third down here from St. Thomas Sports Park, 104.5 The Zone. Buck Rising here with you. Had a lot of fun at Titans practice today. We are off the practice field, back at studio tomorrow. When we have been sporadically in studio, but I think we've been down to once a week.
Yep.
From doing the show at our actual place of employment.
Be twice this week.
Okay, very nice. A little consistency and a home game. We love to see it. Saturday against the Bucs. Kirby would know this. Kirby, do you know if we're doing pregame on Saturday?
Oh my God.
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, God.
Next 2 weeks, we are scheduled to be there. At the moment, we will be in our previous location, and whether we will stay there will be determined later.
I love it when we find things out like this on the
I only found this out Thursday while I was eating hot chicken.
Well, I had somebody ask me the question today, and I said, nobody's told me, so why don't I ask her?
I'm assuming that, I know
Go
that
to the man who always
we're
has
going
the
to be
information.
there, and I'm assuming you're going to be there with us.
I may
to
be
do
there.
your intro thing before we go into the other. I know there's been some adjustments made, and I won't let the cat out of the bag on that in case they haven't announced it or whatever, but yes, the next 2 weeks, next 2 Saturdays, we will be at Nissan Stadium.
Yes, so I will be there in some form or fashion. Now, my mood will depend very much on the weather because I'll be wearing, game day attire, and I don't like doing those things in the sun.
Yeah, you're gonna wear
So
socks
we can
this time?
expect the purple suit?
No, purple suit's Halloween.
Just Halloween?
Just
Seemed like you wore
Halloween.
that a bunch last year.
So your mood is
you're going as the
impacted by
Riddler.
things that you can directly control.
Yeah, like the weather.
Well, no, I can't
traffic.
control the fact that I'm going to look nice for a game.
Well, you can control not wearing a suit in the hot weather and then complaining about
Yeah,
it
that's
being
right.
hot in said suit.
You can
Boom,
also
he remembers a couple
you can-
years ago.
You can control wearing socks as well with a suit, like a man.
That's
okay.
Well, one, it just means that you are a man who is not in touch with your aesthetic. The aesthetic of
I should say like an old man.
no-show socks is a very, very good one. In
Not
fact,
with a suit.
That is not true at all. In fact,
Have you ever seen an old episode of Miami Vice? Sure it is.
oh hell, no. I mean, if Vrabel ever decides to come over and do the radio show, well, we can ask Mike Vrabel this question because I remember when he was doing Super Bowl analysis in Miami, which, ironically enough, in Miami, no, maybe
There you
Tampa
go.
Bay, either way, in Florida.
In Florida.
Slides with the suit, no socks. This is a thing.
I'll text him and find out.
That's psychopathic behavior.
No, it's just wear the right shoes that aren't going to make you
Psychopathic
sweat
behavior.
through the bottom of your feet.
You're the one talking about wearing a suit when it's 90 degrees out in the middle of August.
Well, I don't have a choice on that.
You absolutely have a choice.
100% have a
Show
choice.
me in your contract where it's mandated you wear a suit on game day.
Well, it's principles.
Your principles. It's no one else's but your
It's team
principles.
rules. Like the defense has team rules in preseason games.
The
you have
plot
certain.
thickens.
There is no plot. The plot is I like to look nice. I'm going to do it on game days, and everybody else is going to have to hear me bitch about it when I'm sweating through my suit after the fact.
That's the problem, is the complaining that
Yeah,
comes
that's right.
afterward.
Here's
Nobody's
the
mad at you
thought.
for looking nice.
Wear an outfit that is interchangeable with some stuff. Maybe slacks and the shirt out there where it's hot.
Yeah.
And keep the sport coat with you, and then
That's
put
right.
it on after you go in the stadium, and you have less to complain about.
Look,
Not that we don't enjoy your complaining.
Buddy, it's the whole reason that I have a job is because I complain for a living.
We can revisit that at a later date.
No,
Squeaky wheel.
Nobody is a better example of that. The squeaky wheel gets the oil than me. I can assure you.
I'm going to buy you socks for your birthday next year.
I have socks.
I know you do. You should wear them.
The socks are worn
Look,
appropriately.
a nice pair of fancy socks, it rounds out a suit. It makes it look better. It's
Yes.
more accessories.
By the way, I wore socks in Baltimore. You just couldn't see them because they're called no-shows, you Neanderthal.
No, if they're no shows, then they don't count. Those are not socks. Those are just keeping your feet from having blisters.
If you want to jump in on the conversation today, footwear or otherwise.
This audience is going to back me up on this as well.
You may.
know
Well,
this.
yeah, but that doesn't mean that you're right. It just means that I am prepared to die on this hill by myself. It is, for those of you who watch Game of Thrones, it's Jon Snow in the battle. Can I say the battle of the, do we know, is that word FCC safe? What, if you are.
Born of another mother.
Born of another mother, yes. Yeah. Okay, Battle of the Bastards. I just wanted to make
It's a
sure
great
before I
episode.
said it. That's an episode of Game
Easily
of
a top
Thrones.
5 episode.
So Jon Snow, when everybody else is dead and he's standing up to, well, no, after they've just killed his brother
Spoiler alert.
with an arrow. It's been 10 years at this
Spoiler
point.
alert,
No,
Mark, come
yeah, just bleep you if you haven't watched Game of Thrones
House
yet.
of Dragon comes out this week, too.
Okay, we'll have time for that at some point between training camp and all the other bleep I got to do. What Jon Snow does is he takes the sword, they kill his brother, he's out there by himself in the middle of the battlefield, he's getting charged, and he picks up the sword and he gets ready to take, whatever will come at him in that moment, death or otherwise. That is me on the position of no-show socks with a suit.
Lucas, are you glad that there's someone else in your corner on these topics now?
I haven't been listening for like 6 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. That's probably
which, by the way, is in keeping with the theme of the show. Excellent work by you. Executive producer.
Still 1 versus 1.
Executive producer Lucas Panzica making it all happen. Brett Batzler back in the studio.
That's great.
Who is just now I like Brett better at this point.
Prior to popular opinion, I do like you. I promise.
Well,
most days.
You would be in the minority opinion.
It's okay.
So, Mike Vrabel talked a great deal about one player who a lot of Titans fans are excited about. That particular player had an exceptional day at practice. We will talk about who that player is with Jimmy White. You'll hear from the head coach as well coming up next, since we've spent all our time here on footwear. But if you want to know about a player who is very, very exciting and that a lot of you have high hopes for, we've got some good information for you. Coming up next, live from Titans training camp, here with, it's not even, well, I guess you are technically the Three Stooges, if I'm not including myself in that.
No, you're a stooge.
Kirby just looked at me.
You're the stooge.
Kirby looked at me like, I'm the stooge? It's 104.5 The Zone.
Bucs, Spring Hill.
Buccaneers in preseason game number 2. Coverage starts with the league company.
Sure is. All of the interviews as well made possible by Spring Hill Heating and Cooling and expert analysis like the man sitting to my right, Jimmy Wyatt. TennesseeTitans.com is where you can read 6 observations about anything in the world, anything that you got, anything that you want observed. Jimmy will have 6 observations for you on whatever the case may be. Hi, buddy.
I wish I could have observed some of Kirby's workouts back in the day. You know, we got a little rundown before we got started here. Kirby was talking about his strenuous, rigorous exercise program back in the day. I wish I could have seen that.
It involves.
He looks good, though, doesn't he?
Well, Kirby looks good by his mere existence. Still, the fact that Kirby is still existing,
the fact that I'm still breathing above ground,
it's a miracle. You're living on borrowed time at this point in a haze of cigarette smoke and Pepsis. But yeah, Kirby's out here threatening me. 30 years ago, you couldn't have dealt with this, and I said I couldn't have dealt with it now. I can't deal with it now. Jimmy's hanging out with us after practice wrapped up. So, Mike Vrabel gave a press conference. I know Austin Hooper was up there at the podium as well. What did we learn at practice today that the head coach was asked about?
He gave some props to Caleb Farley, and mainly just talked about his success. In large part is a result of him being able to practice every day.
Yep.
And since Farley's been here, we all know he's dealt with some different ailments. It's really kind of kept him from getting comfortable and kept him from being the player they want him to be. I think the fact he's been out here, what was his practice, 13 today?
Yes.
I thought he was very active, knocked a couple balls down. I thought he was good on that. He talked more about Rashad Weaver, who is a popular topic. A young guy like that's always a popular topic in the preseason when you're getting a chance to play and make plays.
Especially that position.
Yeah, so he flashed. You can tell he's chomping at the bit to maybe see his guys go up against another team, which we're going to get a chance to see here on Wednesday and Thursday when the Buccaneers come to town.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a good line when asked about the baby powder shower that he got from Ben Jones yesterday, saying, and you look at those pictures, his hair's white.
It was. I was like, I thought something was wrong with him. Like, yes. I didn't see the baby powder shower in real time, and then I saw Mike lurking his way into the facility after the fact. I was like, what the hell? What is he doing? Is he doing something for fans? I was disoriented by like pure white Mike Vrabel.
Yes. We didn't wish Mike a happy birthday.
Okay, well, why don't we do this? I believe it's 46, a very happy 46th birthday to Titans head coach Mike Vrabel. Give it to me, Brett.
Happy birthday to him. I don't care. Good luck.
Thank you, Stephen.
But what he said about that is that he said it gave him a chance to see what he's going to look like when he's old. So he does not consider 46 old, which I don't consider it old either. I used to think it was old.
I think it's less old every day. Jimmy Wyatt hanging out with us here on 104.5 The Zone. So let's hear from Mike Vrabel on Caleb Farley, because he did, as Jimmy mentioned, have a really good practice today. At Jay Wyatt Sports, of course, is where you can follow for the training camp updates, but you know this. Go ahead and let me hear from the head coach, Brett, on the second-year corner performing.
Well, I mean, he's been out there every single day, and when you're out there every single day, you have a tendency, and you work hard, and you focus in the meetings. You have a tendency to improve, and I think that's what we're seeing, and that needs to translate here in this next couple practices with Tampa, and then into the game setting and keep going. So that's what happens when you can string some days together, practice days, and come out and use the techniques that we're teaching.
Jimmy, I have this working theory that McCreary and Farley are competing for the outside spot opposite Christian Fulton, even though McCreary has gotten work in dime and nickel without Elijah Molden, although Molden is now set 2 straight full practices after kind of a half day on Saturday. Would you put Farley in the driver's seat, though, for that starting outside corner spot?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I mean, eventually we're going to see a flip here in stuff that they've worked on early in camp and stuff that they plan to do when the season starts. And I'm curious to see what it's going to look like when you start game planning for games and who works outside, who works inside. I mean, the fact that Molden's come back and gotten some more work inside, I mean, you kind of felt like at the beginning – he was your slot corner, and if you're operating under that assumption, then yeah, it's Farley and McCreary outside. McCreary's been really good. I mean, he's been around the football consistently. Farley, I think he's still trying to work his way into being what he can be, and I don't think he's there yet. I think you saw more signs of it. I think all those guys are going to play, but I think that's a good observation to think that could be what's going on here between those two.
You did a mailbag Saturday, right?
I did.
How many Malik Willis questions you got?
Most of them were Malik Willis.
Yeah.
And, I think some people obviously, there's some people out there, you see it on Twitter, social media. I get it in the mailbag. Some people think he ought to start.
Oh,
some
Jimmy.
people, then other people, think he deserves to be the 2 no questions asked. But then I did get some pretty measured questions and comments from people who saw what we all saw, and that he did some good things, but he's also very much a work in progress, and we saw that today. I usually don't chart Malik Willis throws in practice. I always chart Ryan Tannehill, and I started charting Malik today, and he struggled during a large part of today's practice. But that's what we've seen all camp.
As he has, yeah.
It's just kind of growing pains. If you come out here and watch one day and he does a couple of good things, you walk away saying this guy's really making some great strides. You come out here another day when he's not so good, you think this guy's got a long ways to go. And that's what people, you could take out of the preseason game what you wanted to. People seeing him for the first time saw that, saw the long throws, saw the touchdown run, saw the sidearm throws, saw the bullet to Malik Willis, and thought this guy's getting close to being ready. But if you really watched it again, which I did, you realize there were a lot of other opportunities he missed. Yeah, and he wasn't patient enough in the pocket. He didn't see things as well as he needed to see them, and I think that's all part of it.
At Jay Wyatt Sports, of course, is where you can follow the great one, Jimmy Wyatt, hanging out with us after Titans practice today. We talked to O'Hara about it. Pat O'Hara, the quarterback's coach. We had assistant coaches available before practice, and basically what Pat told us is, the scouting report on Malik is what we saw in the preseason game, and that's been kind of the thing that we're talking through. We know that he can win outside the pocket. Let's see him win within the pocket, and obviously some things that are different here at this level for him than were at Liberty, where the offensive line was not going to give him adequate protection. He was more frequently relied on his ability to make plays outside the pocket because of inferior talent up front at a much lower level of football. But with Malik, I think at this point, Jimmy, notable at least for him to be taking those 2 reps today in team drills, because that was the kind of thing that popped for me. Now, I know that maybe it's like Petit Frere and Radens, where you're going to see Radens starting at right tackle one day with the ones and then Nick Petit Frere the next, because they've been kind of doing some of that. But with the quarterbacks, it seems they want a larger sample size to correct those things that we all talked about with Mike Vrabel after the game.
Yeah, and it's always fun and interesting too, because you at some point again, and we're still, what is this, August the 15th?
It's so early.
Yeah, so once you start getting close to the season, you've got to get guys ready to play who are going to play. And those guys have got to get the reps. I think we're in a period now where they're trying to give Malik as much as they can, see what he can handle. He's going to play again a lot on Saturday against the Bucs. He's going to get a lot of work here in these practices. So you put him in positions to either fail or to succeed, and in doing so, you're taking time away from Woodside too. And one of the things O'Hara said, nobody wants to hear it, is that Woodside did some good things on Saturday night himself. He did look. I didn't think he looked very good Thursday night. He didn't look very good. He threw a couple of bad balls, and but and again, this is O'Hara pointing this out, not me. He completed 5 of 7 on 3rd down.
They're going to be in your mentions either way, Jimmy.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter who said it.
Yeah, so and Woodside is not a lost cause that a lot of people seem to make him out to be, and that's why he's still here. But he's got to play better than he played on Thursday, moving forward, and because I do think. I don't want to say he's got to hold off Malik. I think he's got to represent himself well to ensure he's going to be here and make sure they don't bring somebody else in.
That's my thing. I think it's less – it is easy. It's the easiest thing to do it, make it Malik versus Woodside, Malik and Woodside, all these different things, but they're almost having to operate independently of one another while still working in the same position group. Woodside 14 of 24 in that game, 102 passing yards and 2 interceptions. Malik completed 6 of his 11 attempts, 107 yards, and had the 48-yard deep bomb to Racing McMath, courtesy of Chigakonkwo. Is there a position you feel better or worse about the depth after Thursday? Because for me, I think it is the tight ends wholesale, even without Hooper out there. I liked what I saw from Chick. I saw the alligator arms moment where he could have made a catch on third down, but honestly, I'm not mad at him. I asked Luke Stickle today about, what's the fine line between, okay, go make a play, but also protect yourself in preseason because that safety was going to take his head off.
Yeah, that's true. Position I feel better about. I mean, I thought Nenny, I think I'm pronouncing it right. I mean, I think
I've said it 6 different ways.
Yeah, I think he, he was promising what I saw to him. I thought Weaver looked good. I mean, I think that, and I don't know whether Nenny's going to be around when final roster cuts are made. Maybe he earns himself a practice squad spot by making plays in the preseason. I still have questions at several positions. I mean, I think receivers one of them. Godwin made some plays. Robertson's made some plays out here, but are those guys playing for practice squad spots? I think so, more than roster spots. And I think you still got to have question marks at receiver behind, Burks, Woods, Westbrook, Akine. I think Phillips is on this roster. I think Racey McMaster on this roster. And then what? I still wonder about depth at safety. And we've seen some other guys brought in here. I still wonder about what's going to happen on the offensive line. I still have more questions than answers at some spots, which I think is only natural here before your second preseason game.
Well, you start, at least offensively, you start to get into the second layer of stuff, like as far as their installation is concerned. And I think people would expect just generally week-over-week progression to the affirmative, but when you add additional stuff, when you're adding different protections, when you're adding different calls, different plays and things of that nature, it can provide some of those speed bumps, which I think we saw today offensively, all three groups, frankly, based on what we could see from our vantage point over here. But with a guy like Des Fitzpatrick, our buddy Teron Davenport asked Vrabel a question on Saturday about Des and urgency. And I think Mike took it in a different direction than maybe Teron had intended, because I think Teron was asking about maybe year-over-year improvement. But Mike made it about, well, the urgency is there, but the specifics and the technique of what we're asking him to do, there were moments when it broke down. I think he brought up the second play of the game where Dez wasn't necessarily run blocking the way that he wanted to. And I think stuff like that people don't think about, Jimmy, but is so important for their offense, especially the way that they play. That is going to be the difference for a guy like Dez, who it feels like to me is still outside looking in.
Yeah, I mean, he is, at some point has got to give them a reason to keep him and to keep giving him time. And right now, I think he's number 6 at best. I mean, I think McMath is going to help you on special teams. He gives us something different from a speed element, from a size element. We know Phillips is on this team, so we know the top 3. So I think it's between Dez and Malone, and then potentially some other guys. Again, I wonder about Robertson, and he didn't play on Thursday, and I'm curious to see if he plays in how much work he gets moving forward, because I think he has had a really good camp. Like to see him more in the competition. I don't know about Des. I mean, they obviously are trying to be as patient as they can with him, but he does have lapses, and he still, I think, is inconsistent, and he's got to clear some more of those hurdles to give him a reason.
Yeah, I'm just kind of meh with him. I could take him or leave him at this point at the bottom of the roster, and that's not a good place to exist if you're a player like Dez in year 2.
Yeah, and I think he's working hard. I mean, that's what's frustrating too, is because I think he went out of his way to go to Florida to spend time with Tannehill this offseason. Back in March, he showed up at Tannehill's camp at Lipscomb, which I thought was a good show of being a good teammate.
Was he before or after Tannehill? I can't remember.
Yeah. So he I think he works hard out here, but then you see drills and you see Rob Moore encouraging him to finish drills and to pick things up, and that continues to happen in year 2, and it's just how much longer will that go
on? This was the first time we saw Randy Bullock have a shaky day, and they changed the holding situation up. I've never spent so much time talking about a punter competition in my life, but this is a particularly important punter. As the incumbent, and Ryan Stonehouse, who was the holder for the field goal kicks today, that is not something that they can afford to have rattled again, given how hard it has been for this team to find consistency in the kicking game, especially where the misses came from. That money zone that Ackerman talked to us, I think, during mandatory minicamp between 40 and 49 yards. You think there's an actual chance that Brett ends up not on the roster for Stonehouse?
I don't know. I think I'd be surprised. I do think Brett considers himself in a competition, and I think Stonehouse is worth holding on to in some capacity. But how you do it, because if you let him keep punting in the preseason, he keeps hitting 58 and 60-yard bombs, somebody could snag him. I mean, I think with Kern, he's been there. He's handled pressure. He's can do the knuckleball. He's good at directional punting. He still can punt it himself. I mean, his first 2 punts were 52 yards.
Right.
So, he costs you a little bit more. You could go cheaper with Stonehouse, but is it worth saving a little bit of money there? I don't know. And as far as Bullock goes, he missed more kicks today than he missed in all of.
Right.
I think he was like 50. I've got it charted on my wall, and I need to tally it up. I think he was like 51 or 54 coming into today, and then he was 5 of 8 today.
Well, you have a big wall with all these things.
Well, I've got a wall with all Tannehill's completions.
Oh my God!
All the picks in camp, all the Bullock's attempts.
The Wyatt War Room.
Yeah, just to kind of at the end of camp, so I can kind of chart each day, just kind of keep track of what's going on, and that's how my office is decorated. My wife came in. They had like family day around here, and so my wife came and saw my office for the first time yesterday with my kids, and like I've got stuff taped to the wall. I've got pictures taped, and she's saying, "You need to put stuff in frames. You need to get stuff on the wall. You just can't tape stuff up," which is what I do in my garage at home. My wife won't let me have certain areas in the garage where I can hang my stuff, and you ought to see my garage. I've been a Vanderbilt fan since I was a little kid. Every piece of my wall is covered with Vanderbilt posters from back to the Eric Jones days, which is you guys are. Lucas and Will are too, and Buck, you are too young.
Less and less every day, Jimmy.
Eric Jones was a Heisman Trophy candidate for Vanderbilt back in the 80s. I've got a Showtime picture of him poster of him on my wall taken at the Belmead Theater, which does no longer exist either. But I use the term Heisman Trophy candidate very loosely. They tried to bill him for the Heisman Trophy. But
it's all about the marketing.
Yes, but that all started with that time my walls decorated with everything taped to my garage walls, and now I've got stuff taped to my office walls here.
I've never identified more with anything that you've said because Dara's moving in and she's gutting my house, and it's just brutal. I came home, my closet came home from Baltimore. She's using the away games to just completely take over different rooms in my house, and it looks nothing like it did when I left.
It's probably a good thing.
You'll get closets, whatever you want to decorate the closets with.
There's a lot more baskets, and things in baskets that were already previously not necessarily needed for
People
baskets.
get mad at me for using thumbtacks to hang stuff up. I don't see the problem with that. Just thumbtacks for like a poster or something. But no, you got to hammer in a nail and make it look nice.
No.
I'm a thumbtacks guy too. I mean,
no, but they live like animals, Jimmy. It's like a frat house over there. I've seen his place. He's not letting on nearly as much. When the thing that is being thumbtacked as artwork on the wall is a bunch of Nashville SC scarves, then it's a different conversation. What's coming up at TennesseeTitans.com? How many different things are you producing today?
Well, I'm going to bang out this observations from today, and then I got to get working on this mailbag for tomorrow. So those are the next two on the agenda.
Okay, TennesseeTitans.com. At Jay Wyatt Sports, of course, is where you can follow him for all your practice updates, transactions, and other things. Thank you, Jimmy.
Appreciate it. Have a good day.
We will wrap up the show, do some polls, last call for phone calls if you got them. I'm Buck Rising, live from Titans training camp. It's 104.5 The Zone. I don't got Benny and the Jets. I got Tweedledee, Tweedle, Dip Bleep, and Kirby Allen Kirby hanging out here with me. Figure out who's who for yourself. Welcome back. Last segment for us today. Blaine and Mickey got you next. Of course, 3HL on after that on this Tampa Bay Buccaneers game week for the Tennessee Titans. 615-737-1045. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, we'll do some polls here in just a second. Before, we've talked so much football. I want to talk some football.
Oh.
Why does the soccer team stink?
Ooh.
I'm very upset with that.
How long do we have again?
I go out of my way. Now, I haven't gone to as many, fortunately for Lucas and his roommate. I haven't gone to as many games as I've had season tickets for.
Sure.
Football season complicates things. But I turned on the game, pregame, right before the primetime show started last night. I watched the game. I was in the middle of a segment. I looked up. All of a sudden, it's 1-0 Minnesota, or 1-0 in favor of Minnesota.
You can say 1-0.
Went opposite directions that one.
Either way. Why does the soccer team suck now?
Long story short, they counted on they're the second oldest roster in the league coming into this season, and they counted on a lot of guys in their mid to late 30s to continue to perform at the level they did their first 2 seasons, and they have not done so. That is as simple as I can make it.
Little to no depth across the board.
Has that had an impact on interest? Because I haven't been back. I haven't been back in a couple of weeks.
The crowd was not great last night. It was announced at 25,000. It was an 8 p.m. Central Time start, which is criminal in this time zone. And they said 8 o'clock, and then it was actually 8:25, which is a soapbox I could go on and on and on about with the soccer world, but I'll save that for another day. It is interesting, though, because in Nissan Stadium, and even at the beginning at Geodis Park, when that team would concede, there'd be a pretty loud cheer afterwards of like, all right, let's go again. Let's pick ourselves back up. Let's go for it. It's almost like that place was silent after both goals that Minnesota scored last night. Specifically the second one, when the team still had 20 minutes to equalize and strike back. It's like all the fans knew, like, okay, well, that's not going to happen, and this is going to be a 2-1 ending, and they were right.
Attendance hasn't really dropped because it's still that experience. Yeah. It's still something that's very new, but it does feel like the level of in-game engagement has dropped off a little bit because the performance has dropped off.
Well, and I run that through the prism only of, how detrimental can this be? New stadium, all these things. We talked about it a million times, and the soccer, winning is obviously going to cure as many ills as humanly possible. But, like, for example, I took Dara to a game, and there was no in-game atmosphere in the way that you've described. Like, it's kind of been this awkward kind of silence for people who don't know what the supporter section is doing, or they don't have their own chants yet, or maybe on the off time you'll get a Preds, hey, you suck type of thing, and people will get into it, but it's largely just kind of, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Right.
Dara was, I think I lost her after like 20 minutes, and now, I'm not going to be able to take her to soccer games because that's what she's going to associate with her soccer experience.
I mean, the in-game experience is the game, right? Like that's
it's not like baseball
for most
It's not like baseball where you're going to a bar.
I understand that,
it's
but
still in that category.
Well, that's the nature of the sport. Like most American sports, you need in-game entertainment because there's constant timeouts and stoppages. And this is soccer. They play for 45 minutes, take a 15-minute break, play for another 45 minutes. The ball is literally always rolling. They don't want a bunch of sounds and songs and sounds of a goat screaming coming off the Jumbotron in the 16th minute.
We need to retire that.
The in-game environment is the game itself, which is the case all around the world. So it's just a product.
Yeah,
of the
but I don't.
sport.
Okay, and I am an international person. I have an international background. This would be the most. What's the word that I'm looking for that they use in political circles?
Americanized?
No. This will be the most nationalist position I've ever had. I don't care about what they do around the rest of the world. Like, entertain me in the game.
That is off-brand for you a little bit.
Ethnocentric, Buck.
What?
Ethnocentric.
Ethnocentric.
That's the technical word of it.
I don't know.
Political science correspondent Brett Batchelor.
I don't know that that's true. I don't know what path you've just tried to lead me down. I don't have the ability. Well, I could Google it in the last remaining seconds, but that's probably the most nationalist sports opinion I could possibly have. Is I don't give a damn about what they do with the rest of the world at these sporting events. I want to be entertained at our sporting event.
Which is probably why Americans have never truly embraced soccer like that. Because we need entertainment. We need more. Give us a goat screaming.
Buddy,
give us a movie clip.
You have to have
a Jim Carrey movie on the Jumbotron.
You have to have constant stimulus to keep me from looking at my phone. Okay? No, I mean, I'm serious. Dead serious. You have to have something to engage me at every moment because I have the attention span of a small rodent, and I'm not alone in this because I'm going to look down at my phone at the first opportunity that you give me lag time.
And that works when the performance is high and the team is scoring goals and they're controlling the game. You can feel the crowd kind of breathing with the action. But the way the performance has dropped off with the inconsistencies, I could absolutely see why maybe it gets a little bit dry. Hani Mukhtar is still the most valuable player in the league. I don't know if he'll win MVP, but he is the most valuable player in MLS, scored again last night and continues to shoulder the load for this team. But, certainly the depth issues and the inconsistencies have continued to rear their head as they drop in the standings.
They lost 2 of their first 35 home games ever, and now they have lost 4 of their last 7 home games. So it's become the new normal, unfortunately.
You don't like that. I'm laughing before we do the polls. At the juxtaposition of what the Zone TV chat looks like, because we've got equal span. So I don't know if Matt William is a bot or Matt William is just trying to bring us the good word, but there are basically Bible verses in the Zone TV chat today, and then they're immediately all followed by porn spam. So it's a good balance that we have this show. Go ahead and give me the polls. Balance? Give me the polls.
I don't know who you are, but I know what it's time for. Poll update on the Buck Rising Show. Here's a young man with a very particular set of skills. With the final numbers, here's Buck Rising Show correspondent and producer, Lucas Panzica.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford. Custom order any new Ford from Two Rivers. They will deliver it to you when it's manufactured. Who is the first Titans receiver left off the 53-man roster? Eldon English says Josh Malone if they keep 6.
I think it's between Malone and Dez, and I'm going to give Dez the benefit of the doubt because Malone wasn't a draft pick and Malone's been a fringe guy. They're going to give Dez as many opportunities. They have given Dez as many opportunities as humanly possible, given his lack of proficiency in the areas that they need improvement thus far. So Malone is probably outside looking in if we're doing a wide receiver make it or miss it bracket.
How many receivers do the Titans keep? 5, 6, or 7? 72% say 6, 23% say 5, 5% say 7. I think I would lean 5.
I would too, just because I think right now, like if you add, August 15th? Today, they are keeping 3 quarterbacks. I don't know about tomorrow. I don't know about 2 weeks from now. But today, if they keep 3 quarterbacks, as I imagine they would, then I would say 5 receivers is probably the place that you remove the numbers from. But that does not exclude practice squads, and I meant to bring this up with Jimmy. You can protect 4 practice squad players every week in the regular season. So Woodside, Stonehouse, and other guys like that, that is maybe a place where you could stash a player or 2.
I think it's 5, and I think Terry Godwin is closer to making this team just based on the way he's playing right now than Des Fitzpatrick.
Interesting.
What is your biggest takeaway from the first week of the NFL preseason? Puka says, don't play your starting quarterback in the first preseason game. Zach Wilson, the Jets mucked around and learned.
My preseason takeaway is that not only is Deshaun Watson a proven pervert, but now he's also bad at football.
Chris Freeman says that the Baltimore Ravens would win the preseason football tournament every year if it existed.
It's true. 21 straight preseason games.
Hang the banner.
They are. I mean, listen. If this was the Indianapolis Colts or the Nashville Predators,
I was going to say, or the hockey team,
the banner would be up. The banner would be done.
Who is in the right at Kentucky? John Calipari, Mark Stoops, both of them, or AD Mitch Barnhart, that the media is making a mess of this thing. 42% go with the football coach, Mark Stoops. 30% go with the basketball coach, Coach Cal. 19% say they are both correct. That's where I lie. 9% say Mitch Barnhart.
9% of you are being dopey, just like the Kentucky Athletic Director. I'm probably on the side of both because I do think they both have points to be made.
Will Bowling is shaking his head.
They're both wrong. It's a farce. This is a stupid conversation to be having this time of year.
What happened?
None of it should be happening.
Wait, is Coach Cal wrong that Kentucky's a basketball
school?
school?
But you don't say that.
No, it doesn't.
You don't kneecap your football program that's making more money than you are.
I agree.
And then Stoops shouldn't respond to it.
I agree.
Third down.
But he said it. So
penalties offset.
It's either a fact or it's not. Is Kentucky a basketball school?
Well, yeah,
Okay, then Coach Cal's right.
but he's wrong in saying it.
He is
so
wrong.
I think he's wrong.
He did. The approach is definitely misguided.
Horrible.
No, well, thank God.
I'm happy it happened.
At least Cal's honest.
He doesn't make as much money, so it's financially it's a football school, just like every other place, including your Indiana Hoosiers.
Yep.
Well, I don't know.
No, they're making more, much more.
They're making more in football.
A whole lot more.
Kansas
is. So
might
you
not
are.
be ticket sales, but it is more.
All right, defend the Rock.
Just means more.
Anyway,
those are the polls.
Not at Indiana. It certainly doesn't. That is the show. Blaine and Mickey have you covered. Lucas, what's on Blaine and Mickey today?
Blaine and Mickey have Nick Westbrook-Akina coming up right off the top.
Speaking of Hoosiers, so you'll have NWI with Blaine and Mickey. 3HL will be having a lot of fun after that. Prime time tonight, I will talk to you around 8 p.m. Central Time. And if not, radio show starts at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone. Joe Corey, contract talk. It'll be a lot of fun because there's a lot of contract negotiations, including Jeff's, that still need to be done potentially before the season starts. See you guys.